Good afternoon. I want to welcome you to this hearing of the Assembly Select Committee on Foster Care. And I want to thank you all for being here. You know, on a Thursday afternoon in the state capitol, my colleagues have many other responsibilities, and many of them are traveling to go be with their families. That actually doesn't bother me with this subject matter. You know, the purpose of this hearing is to bring together a lot of people who have a keen special interest in the field of foster care to have a conversation about where ought the growing edge to be to California's public policy? Where can we delve into existing public policy and make some changes, make some adjustments that can get better outcomes in the lives of kids? And because I know that's the focus of this hearing, I know that all of you that come out and participate will be listening with me. And I certainly see my chairing of this select committee, which I sought out, as a collaboration with the foster care community. As I was just sharing with, I have many expert witnesses today, but among the most important to me are the 3 foster youth who will be with us. You know, I was sharing with them, I'm a grandpa of children that came through our county's foster care system, but I didn't grow up in foster care. So I can try to be diligent and attentive to my duties, but I do not understand these issues in the same way that the youth who will speak are. And so some of you may have heard me giving them my little pitch there to just relax and don't be overawed by the circumstances, because they are subject matter experts today. And as we try to understand how the system works, no one can tell us better than people who've lived within it. So they're going to join us here for our 3 panels. As I was talking with one of the foster children, Alexis, who's here, I remember being a student at UC Berkeley in the 70s. And that was a time when we'd seen a president resign. And the prospect of going into public service struck many of my contemporaries on the UC Berkeley campus as sort of crazy. Why would you do that? The highest officer in the land has resigned in shame. It just seemed like such a bad idea. And I remember standing at Sproul Plaza saying, well, I don't know about that. People in government make decisions. Those decisions affect people's lives. And if you can improve the quality of those decisions, you've touched people in a big way. That is the power of work in the public realm. And so that, to me, is the conversation we are having today. Decisions have been made, will be made. If we can learn from what's going on in programs, in all the multitude of agencies, state, local, county, nonprofit, law enforcement, welfare, DSS, the multitude of agencies, the courts, we're all in this big partnership to try to touch lives in a positive way. So as we have the chance to learn today, that's what we want to do. And I do want to note today that the Assembly unanimously, with one accord, approved my resolution, ACR 179, declaring yet again the month of May as Foster Care Month, which we could declare any month in the year Foster Care Month. This is always a good month because we're really getting down to key budget decisions. And while I often think of a hearing like this as contemplating legislation in a year to come, there may be things that are worth pitching as a part of this year's budget cycle. And so I actually think to kind of put a spotlight among my colleagues on foster care is particularly timely in the month of May. And so I'm looking forward to that. And then to just, I guess my last comment in connection with that resolution, of course, in our state assembly chambers, just downstairs from us, we have the portrait of Abraham Lincoln. And I remarked that a quote attributed to the always quotable Abraham Lincoln is that one never stands so tall as when they stoop to help a child. And so I'm just looking forward to all of us sort of standing tall today. So we have 3 panels that we will go through. And the first one is looking at AB 12, extended foster care. Where are we now? So that's very important. How do we help kids that we know in the inevitable march of years are going to move beyond this system to be launched with the greatest prospects of success possible? And how do we meet their needs? That's the first panel. Vitally important conversation. We will then focus on the area of job training. And I'm very grateful for the participants in that panel who are here. In many ways, I think job training is getting on the job is actually where any person starts to put together everything in their life that they've learned to this point that is supposed to help them to success. A job is where you really start integrating these lessons in real life. I think that's the inherent scariness of a job, the challenge of a job, but it's jobs that make people independent adults. And not just by the paycheck, but by discovering there's abilities that I had in me that I didn't really have put to the test until I had to meet the requirements of a job and work with coworkers and hear what my manager said and follow it up. There's just a tremendous amount of growth that happens when someone gets in a job. And so that's not necessarily educational service or this or that service, but it's an indispensable part of growing complete young adults, which is the object of these programs. And then the special issues of dual-track youth, crossover youth. It's interesting to me to note that when I was working in this building running a big committee in 1988, one of the important early bills that came out of the Judicial Council to look at developing county-based protocols for this was adopted back in 1989. And so I'm looking forward to that conversation. So with that, I have with me Amanda Kirchner, who's my legislative director, and we're McGeorge buds. We're both lawyers and graduates of McGeorge Law School here. I love having a lawyer on my staff and rely heavily upon Amanda generally, but specifically with respect to this subject matter. And so why don't we get going with our first panel. Let me invite forward Amy Limley of the John Burton Foundation. And why don't we just, can we invite them all up at the same time? Let's do that. Nate Okpich, who has some findings on the Cal Youth Project, which is a examination of the lives of kids who are aging at age 17, 19, and 21. And we're going to get the report on the interviews with 19-year-olds. And then Alexis Barris, who will be my foster youth witness for the first panel. So, yeah. Okay. And again, thank you all for being here. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Chairman Cooley, and thank you for all the leadership you've shown on this issue. We can't really say enough what it means to have leaders like yourself who understand this issue on a policy level, on a personal level, and despite big steps we've made in the field, understanding that there's even more to take. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy.
Again, my name is Amy Lemley. I'm with the John Burton Foundation, and I'm delighted today to talk a little bit about extended foster care, we refer to as AB 12. And so I'll start with a very little bit of background. AB 12 came about largely, I guess the first part of the process was a change in federal law that allowed states to opt into extended foster care. California played an integral role in the passage of this federal legislation. And what it really said that if states wanted to extend foster care to age 21, that it would pay for the federal share of cost, which was an essential step forward. Without that change in federal law, AB 12 simply would not have been affordable or possible. The bill was authored by then Assemblymember Jim Bell and former Assembly Speaker Karen Bass, and it was really, had a very diverse coalition of sponsors that included a range of interests, and I think that that's one of the critical aspects of its success. We had the counties, we had labor, we had dependency attorneys, advocates, and most importantly, we had the California Youth Connection, who really brought their voice center to the conversation. And
so the bill started putting together the pieces that implementation would take. Got them
Exactly.
working in partnership around the ideas and got them accustomed that we need to keep it moving forward.
From the very beginning, yes. And which made it a challenging bill. You ask a dependency attorney and a county social worker what the right way to proceed, they're probably going to give you different answers. But the fact is, it was a highly collaborative, very strong coalition of people that really worked hard to find the right solution for young people, and motivated by the fact that our outcomes for young people were very, very poor, combined with, I think, a growing realization that 18 was no longer an age at which intact families ended their support for their adult children. So the combination of the evidence that young people were faring very poorly with a changing demographic reality that many intact families are supporting young people until 24, 28, or even 30. And so what you have here on this slide, and I did, there should be a handout of it for you, Mr. Cooley, is the growth in the number of youth in California ages 18 to 21. And that orange line is before the implementation of extended foster care. So the bill was signed in 2010. Implementation started in 2012, and then you can really see those bars start growing. We've had a massive growth in the number of young adults in foster care. One question people raise sometimes is, wow, I didn't know we had young people who are non-minors in care before that. California's always had a practice of serving young adults in care more in limited pockets around the state, and usually limited because of the affordability issue. It was really at 100% county pay. But with the extension of foster care till 21, we really did see a lot of young people taking us up on this offer. And this is many more, truthfully, than we expected. We expected maybe a 40 to 60% uptake rate based on the experiences of Illinois or New York, and we're really north of 70%, which we feel if young people did not want to be in the program or did not feel like they were getting something beneficial, we wouldn't see this level of growth. Because, as I always say, as the former director of a direct service agency, young people vote with their feet. If they're not liking what they're getting, they do something else. And so we, as a sponsor organization of AB 12, feel very positive about this. So the next part of my presentation is talking about a few policy features of extended foster care that I believe have really led to this level of uptake that I thought you may be interested in. And these are things that states around the country have turned to California with interest about. I think there are aspects of the legislation that are true models for implementation of extended foster care for young adults. And the first one is making the program accessible. So AB 12 structured extended foster care as an opt-out, not as an opt-in program. So when a young person turns 18, there's no special hearing at which point they get anointed eligible. They are presumptively eligible, which means a great deal. In other states, it's just the opposite, and you see a massive fall off. But in California, you turn 18, life goes on, and you're just in extended foster care. Now, what is different is you have to meet one of 5 participation conditions. And a second part of this accessibility is the way these conditions were defined. And I think the credit for this really goes to the California Department of Social Services in partnership with a wide range of stakeholders, relative caregivers, other providers, youth, really having a very inclusive process where what you see on the slide are the requirements as defined in federal law, But the devil's in the details, and the all-county letter that really defined what that meant is incredibly inclusive. So, for example, enrolled in a program to remove barriers. We have young people enrolled in all different kinds. That can include drug and alcohol treatment. There's a lot of different things young people can do to be eligible for extended foster care. And so our program here in California isn't a game of gotcha, where we're waiting to prove young people aren't doing the right thing. It's more of a structure of 5 participation conditions, lots of options under those conditions, and it's really, I think, a very youth development oriented approach where we're going to take a young person where they're at and move them forward. So I think that's one aspect of the program that has really led to that high uptake rate.
So as you're describing it, because an issue that interests me pretty generically is oversight, how do agencies administer the law? This would be an example if you had the federal framework, but then look at that federal framework and seeing that California doing the opt-out approach obviously is looking to provide liberal availability of these, looking at those federal criteria and providing guidance to the counties through a guidance letter that made clear they should err on the side of inclusion if there wasn't a hard boundary that would disqualify.
Correct.
Basically.
And really in the spirit of the formation of the law with that broad coalition and many others, the young person that was often brought to mind was the most challenged young person. We weren't interested in having AB 12 cream and to take the young person who is going to succeed anyway. It's really the young person that without this policy, there will be a history of homelessness and criminal justice involvement. Now, I'm not saying that was achieved at every turn, but that was truly the spirit, and by being inclusive in the participation conditions, I think that we did achieve that. The next aspect of the program that I would point to that has been mission critical in the level of participation is California elected to create 2 youth-friendly placement options. So we know the ages of 18 to 21 is a time when many young adults live on their own for the first time, and there was a concern that if we just offer the same kinds of placements as are available to minors, will young adults want to participate in that? Are they ready to experiment with new, more independent ways of living? And so the supervised independent living placement and transitional housing placement plus foster care were the 2 youth-friendly placement options that were created. I think what's interesting about the supervised independent living placement, which is known as the SILP, it can be a lot of different settings. The young person identifies the setting, it meets basic health and safety standards, and then the young person receives the rate directly. Now imagine what a sea change that is, where you're really telling a young person, we trust you, we are paying you directly. Again, I'm not saying that is a perfect placement. I'll highlight some issues that we do have with it, but it really respects the fact that these are legal adults who are making their own decisions about their young adulthood. And it is our most prevalent placement in extended foster care. 40% of young people, just shy of that, 39 are in a SILP. Transitional housing placement plus foster care has also been a big success. It's a much bigger rate. It's much higher than the basic rate, but it is different in that it provides a host of complementary supportive services. So this is really envisioned for the young person who has never lived independently, maybe hasn't completed high school, maybe has never held a job. And so they want the support required to move into those different domains. And it's 16% of placements as of January 1st, 2016. So these youth-friendly placement options have been exciting to young people that have said, I want to participate in extended foster care, but I want the fact that I'm a legal adult respected too. And so that really accommodates that. The third aspect that I'd like to highlight regarding AB 12 is that California didn't say you get one moment to make a choice, and if you decide you're out, you're out. We have a very excellent reentry system. We have a very low barrier process for saying, I don't want to be in care, and then changing your mind and coming back into care. And this is absolutely developmentally appropriate for an 18 to 21-year-old. If young adults are even slightly like me, I thought I wanted to do something, and then I changed my mind. And we want that same kind of flexibility for our young people. And we've had almost a little over 1,700 young people who've exercised that flexibility. And I'm really proud to say that we have had a number of states since California's implementation of this provision that have changed their policy to model it after ours. So we're keeping the door open. We're not saying, well, good luck, our way or the highway. We're saying it's normal if you want to try to not be in care. Try it for a while. If it doesn't work, come back. Just as a parent would never say, let's shut the door and lock it. The second real great innovation of this is that some young people who exit to adoption or guardianship, it doesn't work. And so instead of anointing those as the end-all, be-all, we recognize that, and there's a legal avenue for those young people to come back into care too. So it's much more fluid than a moment-in-time decision. And again, I think these are key aspects of the legislation that have made it accessible and interesting and something young people want to participate in. The next feature I'll focus on of AB 12 is from the very beginning, there was a strong commitment to ensure that probation youth have access to extended foster care. So that graph you see in front of you is the growth in probation foster youth in extended foster care. You can see before the implementation, we had around 500, and we've almost tripled the number of young people in extended foster care. And this was made possible due to some very creative language, some really interesting ways of allowing young people to participate in extended foster care, but not necessarily remaining a delinquent. Because a young person who's in the delinquency system may not want to participate if they still have to have a probation officer and feel like they're in, the custody of the juvenile court. It's called 450 transition jurisdiction, but I think it's very much of a credit to the policy that we've had a high level of engagement among our probation youth. And probation youth are eligible to participate in any of the placement options as young people who were not probation youth. So they are equal, really, under the eyes of the law and under the policy. And it's really a fresh start for these young people who maybe made a mistake as a younger adolescent, but now instead of saying you're going to, be without anything, you really have a whole system of support to help you move into transition into young adulthood. I think a fifth aspect that I would highlight is that California did not say, well, we're implementing extended foster care, so we're going to defund everything else. For many years before extended foster care, we had a program called THP Plus. It's a transitional housing program for former foster youth. And when we passed AB 12, there was a very explicit understanding that we don't want it to be our way or the highway, that good youth development understands that there need to be multiple channels of service. Now, this isn't the easy option and it's not the cheap option, but it's the one that ensures that we catch vulnerable young people. And so this is the participation in THP Plus since the implementation of extended foster care. As you can see, there has been a reduction. Most young people want to stay in foster care. And what has really happened at this program is we've seen older youth participate. So most of the participants in this program now are over 21. They're young people who are parenting or young people who have a serious mental illness. So just as 18 wasn't a magic number for young people before extended foster care, 21 isn't now. So we have this great option to support them for an additional period of time if that's necessary. The last feature that I'll focus on for why I believe extended foster care has at a high level of participation here in California is there is a very strong emphasis, let's not just lengthen the runway. Let's not just be in care for 3 more years. While that is good in and of itself because you're not homeless, we can do a lot more than that. And so what this chart really shows is the growth in the number of foster youth attending community college. And since the implementation of extended foster care, we've had a 42% increase in the number of young people in community college. Young people are using this time wisely. They're not just sitting there saying, well, I won't be homeless for 3 more years. They're going out there, they're getting into degree programs, they're getting to a position where they can transfer. Now, I won't say that as every young person, but with figures like these, which are from the Community College Chancellor's Office, we have at least some preliminary evidence that young people are doing something different with those 3 years, and that they're going to come out of extended foster care in a different position than they would have if they exited at 18, which really is what this is all about. So for the John Burton Foundation, and you're going to hear the much more objective and definitive analysis from our researcher on the panel, we feel extended foster care has been a resounding success. The study you will hear more about compares young people in care with those who did not choose to stay in care, those who are out of care. I mean, and the raft of outcomes that young people who remain in care are doing better in is just amazing. It absolutely has some kind of protective effect. When you look at housing, education, criminal justice involvement, these are areas a 19-year-old who is in care versus a 19-year-old who is not in care are having a fundamentally different lived experience. And I think it's something that California should take great pride in, that over 20,000 young people's lives have been changed forever because of the investment that we're making every day. So that being said, I wouldn't be an advocate if I did not take a few moments to highlight areas where I think we can do a lot better. And so this is the first one. Reframing our thinking about young people in foster care to make college or career and technical education an expectation for all. There is still continues to be too much of a sentiment that foster youth aren't college material. And the example I'll give to you is some data that I presented to a group where it showed that 30% of youth in extended foster care were participating in post-secondary ed. Now, before I got to my conclusion, which is how low this is, the group concluded this is amazing. So for me, that's 70% of young people who, if we don't get them trained, we are really resigning them to a life of minimum wage employment. So we need to get better within our child welfare system, providers, counties, everyone, at preparing them for post-secondary ed and supporting them through that process. And there's lots of things we can do to do that. One specifically is expanding access to the Chafee Education Training Voucher. That is the only form of financial aid for foster youth. Assemblymember Thurmond has a bill currently under consideration, and there is a budget proposal as well. This, Mark Courtney, who's the lead author of the Cal Youth Study, recently said this one policy change could perhaps make the biggest difference in post-secondary education outcomes for foster youth. So we're very excited to be part of that conversation. A second thing where we must improve is preventing unplanned pregnancy and supporting parenting dependence. When care used to end at age 18, we had no idea how many young people became parents by age 21. Well, now we know that 34% of our young women who are in foster care at age 21 not will have gotten pregnant, but will have given birth. So this is huge, and it has major implications for their lifelong educational attainment, not just of their attainment, but their children as well. The good news is we have done almost nothing as a system to prevent unplanned pregnancies, so we can't do anything but move up from there. But we do have to start to take action. And so there is a budget proposal currently under consideration that would, for the first time, invest resources in training social workers, probation officers, judges, and youth themselves on preventing unplanned pregnancy. It's a very sensitive topic, and all things being equal, everyone kind of looks at the other way and hopes that someone else covered it. But the truth is no one is covering it, and that has resulted in a rate of pregnancy that is astronomical. The recent Cal Youth Study, over half of our 19-year-old parenting dependents have been pregnant at least once, and a not insignificant number have been pregnant twice already. So we have to do better for our young people to give them information about their options. The next one is really the issue of young people who are in group homes.
Ask,
Oh, yeah.
So who has brought forward that budget proposal? I mean, who's the champion of it in the system? Is there?
Well, I think the group of organizations that it brought forth is the County Welfare Directors Association, the Children's Law Center of California, and the John Burton Foundation, together with a coalition of many others. And it's hard because, again, there's so many competing priorities. It's the year of CCR. This can seem like a little niche issue when looked at in isolation, but yet it is a key driver to future child welfare participation. If we want true prevention, preventing unplanned pregnancy and better supporting our parenting dependence is a very smart investment.
No, it makes sense. I was just interested in knowing when there's a proposal, then there's some people that are in the conversation. I just wanted to hear that.